one. So here I am with Mark, and we're talking one of our mutual favorite subjects, which is the revitalization of Belleville. And Mark it has a meeting coming up with the mayor of Belleville, and they're going to talk, I guess, revitalization. And my role in this is fairly minor, but myself and a group of other people really believe in small town Ontario. Mark, I believe that small towns, whether it's Whitby, Ontario, or Brockville, Kingston, Belleville, Picton. I mean, I think people are rediscovering these small towns, and and what is happening, and I'm sure you see it all the time because you're so plugged into this kind of thing, is that I think there's probably 300,000 or 400,000 people in Toronto planning to move out. And I'll give you an example of that. My daughter and her husband both have good jobs in Toronto, but a house in Toronto, even now with interest rates going up, is very expensive. And so they wanted to have a family, and my daughter was allowed to work remotely, and her husband's job was also flexible. And so they moved to Whitby, which is about 50 minutes from downtown Toronto, maybe 55 minutes by the GO train, I think. They were able to buy a nice house in Whitby for probably a third of what they would have paid in Toronto. Yeah. So whether it's Whitby or Peterborough or like all the other towns I mentioned, I think there's a lot of interest in that. And Belleville's an interesting case. It's about 55 or 56,000 people. It's on the border with Prince Edward County, which I think is probably a pretty good thing. Although I found out that the competition between Prince Edward County and is it Hastings?
Yes, Hastings County, yes.
It's pretty intense, and they're a little parochial, if I may say. But anyway, I think Belleville has a great future. It has a number of economic engines. It has some government, some healthcare, some education. I really like Loyalist College. It has quite a bit of industry, which is a little bit surprising. It has strong services, and it has a beautiful setting on the Bay of Quinte and the Moira River. And there may be some other economic engines I'm not aware of, but it probably has 5 or 6 economic engines. Obviously, it doesn't have all the engines that, for example, Toronto has. Toronto has a huge finance industry. It has a big car industry, but it has quite a strong economic base, more than I thought. And so I think at 55 or 56,000 people, Belleville's well positioned to benefit over the next couple of decades. But I agree with what you said before we started recording this, that it needs strong political leadership. The new mayor, or the new old mayor, he's come back, I think, for the second term or something. And I was glad to hear that you may be an advisor to the new mayor, and have some influence there, because political leadership is really important. If you look at some towns that are not doing well, and there's probably a bunch of reasons for it, but one of them is probably that the city council and the mayor has said, we're good. We don't want any change, right? And think about how much the economy has changed, even in the last 3 years because of the pandemic, but even before that, change is accelerating. So I'll give you an example of that. I had a small hand in writing the coach house bylaw in the city of Ottawa. You know what a coach house is, right? A very simple idea. And that idea came from my experience when I went to the University of California at Santa Cruz. This is a long time ago, 1969. I lived in a small coach house in the backyard of a big house. There was a big house there, and there was an old lady living there. She's probably younger than I am now, but when you're 19, you think anybody over 30 is old. So anyway, so there's the old lady living in a big house, and then she had a beautiful 1-bedroom coach house in the backyard with flowers all around it. And myself and my girlfriend lived there. It was a very pleasant way to live. And then we'd go up the hill to the university in a little original Volkswagen Beetle. It was a lovely thing, and I learned a lot about that kind of lifestyle, because California's had coach houses since they've had houses, I think. And what happened was I brought that memory with me. I lived in Australia for many years, and of course back to Canada at some point. And I did a subdivision. I used to be a real estate developer when I was younger, and I did a subdivision with about 850 homes. And all of the lots that went around a corner, they become pie-shaped, right? They become a little bigger. And I thought, well, what a great idea it would be to allow, on these pie-shaped lots where you have the house in front and you have this huge lot in the back, to allow coach houses. They were called granny flats back then.
Yeah.
Not exactly politically correct today, because mostly they for granny, all the men were dead, and granny lived in the coach house close to the family, but not with the family. And so I zoned it. I had to explain to the planners what the hell a coach house was. This is Ottawa, right? And what a granny flat was. And they listened, and they said, okay, sure. So out of the 800 or 850 lots that we put the roads, water mains, and sewers in that subdivision, I think it was called Briarbrook. About 200 of them had the ability to build coach houses. I thought, that's great.
Wow. That's quite a few.
Yes, quite a few. And I thought the idea might also not only help multi-generational living, might not just be granny living there, it might be your adult children with children, but also it might help people, young people and old people, if they need a little bit of extra income. Yes. And the old lady who in California, I got to know her, and I asked her why she had built the coach house in the backyard. And by the way, it's still there. I checked.
Cool.
The address is 1011 and a half Seabright Avenue, Santa Cruz, California. The half, of course, being the coach house. And she said, well, she likes students and she likes company, and she was a bit lonely. In the time that I spent there, I never saw anybody visit her. So, she wanted some company. And then she said, because she was a single lady, it gave her a little bit of extra security, just knowing that there was somebody close by that she liked and trusted. But as I got to know her even better, she admitted to me that it also helped her financially. And so I carried that memory with me, and the very first subdivision, maybe it wasn't the first, maybe it was the second or third subdivision, but among the first subdivisions, I put the ability to build coach house. A decade later, one beautiful summer day, in Ottawa, we have about 3 days of summer. So on one of those beautiful days.
3.5 sometimes.
Yeah, maybe 5. I don't know, not very much.
Not very many, no.
And no, I'm in Merida today. This is the capital of the Yucatan. It's going to be 32 degrees today in Merida, and my all the folks I work with back home are suffering through -20. So
that's right. It's -15 here right now.
Yeah, something like that. So probably a 50-degree difference. But anyway, so I walked through the subdivision through Briarbrook on a beautiful sunny day, and I'd go around to the lots that, were allowed coach houses, and I'd kind of look in the backyard, and one guy comes running out, what are you doing? Seeing this weird guy walking around on a Sunday afternoon looking in his backyard. And I said, I'm just wondering if anybody had ever actually built a granny flat. And did you know this lot is allowed? Oh, he said, yes, actually, I know that. And I said, oh, okay, good. Because it was right on title, right? So right in the zoning, it was also registered on title. And I said, but I don't see any. Here we are 10 years later, none have been built. He said, I actually looked at that. And the city of Kanata, which was a suburb of Ottawa in the West End, doesn't exist anymore. It's now all Ottawa, but it was Kanata back then, had brought in some new rules. I said, what new rules? And they said, well, you could only build a coach house for 5 years, so it had to be a temporary structure. And you could only rent it to a direct related, like family member. So you could rent it. I don't know if rent is the right word, but the only person who could occupy it was like a son or a daughter, or I guess a grandmother or grandfather. That was the only, and you had to pay a development charge for it, which is ridiculous. Development charges are supposed to pay for additional infrastructure, outside of the subdivision, like a new sewer plant. But I mean, basically, a coach house doesn't add very much demand to anything. So anyway, nobody had ever built one because they brought the rules in, and I went to see the mayor, which I think was Myrtle Nichols, and I said, "Why'd you bring these rules in?" And she gave me a lot of baffle gab. You know what that is, right? And the real reason was people in Kanata were afraid that if you build a coach house, undesirable people would move in. You know, motorcycle gangs would move in, drug dealers would move in, people of different races would move in. So they brought in these rules, which made it financially impossible to build a coach house. I mean, you just couldn't do it. Would you build $100,000 coach house that you have to tear down after 5 years? I sure as hell wouldn't. So that taught me just how important it is to have political support for the kinds of initiatives that, you sent me, 10 or 12 different ideas and papers that you've written, all really excellent, Mark. But when you talk to the mayor tomorrow, the mayor and the councillor, these are the most, plus whoever the economic development officer is in Belleville, head of recreation, these are the most important people in terms of the future of Belleville. It isn't somebody like me and my group who are renovating a few buildings on Front Street, because if we don't have flexibility in
Absolutely.
we're sunk. And I'll give you one more example. I won't go on for an hour, but I'll give you one more example, and then we'll talk some more specifics. When we were renovating one of the buildings that I'm involved with on Front Street, 249-253 Front Street, which used to be called the China Gate Building.
Yes, China Gate, yeah.
And by the way, we discovered that the original name for it was the Burroughs Building.
The Burroughs, yeah.
We do not ever use the former term that you throw that one out. It's called the Burroughs Building now, and it will be at some point when we finally finish it. We'll have a christening of it, and I'd like you to come, and of course the mayor, if he was willing to officially, break the bottle of champagne and open the building. But one of the things that we wanted to do with that building was create at grade a live-work condition. And to do that, we wanted to put not one but two apartments in the back of the building. And then you have the front of the building. So let's say you were a physiotherapist, Mark. You could rent an apartment in back, and your commute to work would be through a connecting door, and the physiotherapy clinic would be facing Front Street. And the former council, and planning committee that I talked to, and of course the committee of adjustment, which we had to go to twice.
Yes.
They did support that, and I was really, really pleased because many councils and planning committees and committees of adjustment would say, "Oh, no, you can't do that." And I said, "Well, I'm not planning to put residential at grade in front and take away from hopefully the vibrancy
from the commercial front." Yeah,
exactly. But we have an alley in the back there.
Absolutely.
And I said, I do a lot of coaching now. I think you know that, Mark. And
yes.
I've coached since I retired from the university and basically retired from. I'm a small developer now, not a large scale developer. But since I did that, I do some coaching and teaching and mentoring. That's what I'm doing here in Merritt. I'm teaching. I see in the States and in Canada, a real desire amongst young people and older people to go back to the way we were designing cities and towns in the 1880s, all the way through to the 1950s. Less car dependent, more of a 15-minute walkable city.
Yep. Absolutely.
Not necessarily. I mean, I'm not saying it's for everybody. Some people want to live in the rural area on a 2-acre lot, and have their privacy. God bless them. I'm all for that. But not everybody wants that. And not everybody wants to live we have a suburb in Ottawa, Barrhaven, where Mark,
know it well.
Yeah. Okay. Where they're still approving subdivisions with 3,500 houses in a row and not a single store.
Yes.
No dentist.
Not a total community, in other words.
Well, nothing. And every trip is a car trip, even to get your kids to school.
You have to drive over.
They're
everywhere.
The streets are not gridded. They have all these P loops and stuff like that. And so to
I know
get
it well.
it's 11 left-hand turns to get to your house and 11 rights
Yep.
out. And so even to get your kids to school, you have to drive them. You know, if you want to get a popsicle, there's no way you got to drive to a friggin' Walmart miles away or kilometers away. So what we have in Belleville is an opportunity to redesign, particularly the downtown and the inner suburbs, to remember and recall that the best subdivisions in virtually every town in North America where there's no crime are these subdivisions that allow corner stores, that
Hmm.
allow a law office, an accounting
Hmm.
office, a
Hmm.
physiotherapy clinic, that allow an apartment at grade and somebody working in front running a hairdressing salon living on the ground floor. You know, where there are coach houses where you could get your car repaired. Again, going back to Ottawa, there's a downtown neighborhood called the Glebe.
Yes.
And
Know it well.
there you go. And people say, oh, you know, when I wanted to do subdivisions in Kanata and other places in Ottawa, I wanted to have the ability to have an attic apartment, an apartment
Yep.
above the garage,
Yeah. A
coach,
loft apartment. Yeah.
a job at home, right? You know, open
Hmm.
up your nail bar if you want there.
Yep. Yeah.
And everybody said, "Oh, no, 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 no." The planner said, "Oh, you can't do that, Bruce. That people don't want that." I said, "Well, actually, they do. Have you ever walked through the Glebe?" They said, what are you talking about?" Well, the Glebe has
Hmm.
shops, it has metal bashing, it has a
Hmm.
sports arena at Lansdowne Park where the
Yep.
CFL team plays.
Yep. Yep.
Um, you
Your
know,
old Rough Riders.
the old Rough Riders. They
Yeah.
have
Your old Rough Riders.
yeah, there you go. They have attic apartments, apartments above the garage, or apartments in the back. They do have coach houses there, built many years.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And would you say the Glebe is a bad place to live? Oh no, it's a
Beautiful
nice
place.
place to live. Would you say that property values in the Glebe are dropping? Oh no, no, they're going up a lot. So why
Hmm.
is that? Why can't we do that in
Hmm.
in Belleville?
Well, it's funny. That's exactly where we're heading. So at least I was with the team that was there. Our planning department was actually
Mhm.
very progressive. The head of planning became the CAO after the departure of the other. And I'll be honest with you, any previous councils that have been there and those that are there now are very progressive in many ways. So I think you've, as you've noted, you've wandered into a place where the minds are open,
Yeah.
and I think that Belleville, as I used to say when I first arrived, was in some regards they were so far behind they were ahead. And what I mean by that is
That's good.
they haven't
I like
they haven't
that.
forged they haven't forged ahead and erased all of the potential opportunities for taking what was right and making it right again. And I think you're bang on. I mean, it's funny you say that because I ran a business for about 13 years and I purchased a property specifically because there was a house on it. And I built a garden center, a nursery, an operations
Wow.
center on that property and lived on the property as well. And
Yeah,
it was very
nice.
rare because I was able to use the house as a watchman's quarters and able to get away with that. And many of my friends have purchased properties, lived on top in lofts, and or resided nearby and ran their businesses from it. And as a matter of fact, in downtown Belleville, not too far from where you are, or your investment is Lafferty's Bensware. And Tom Lafferty, who has
Yeah.
been a business owner for many years,
Yeah.
had business expansion into the Eastern Ontario area. He's now down to one store in semi-retirement. But what he did was he sold his house, sprawling home in the East area, uh, his lease at the mall and bought a property in downtown Belleville. He put his shop at the bottom and he renovated his top and he lives up there.
Absolutely.
And
I know. And you
you
know
know
the
Tom well.
yeah, and you know the that French bakery there.
Oh yeah, that's wonderful. Oh
They've
yeah,
done the same thing, right?
yeah, exactly. They
They have
all
the
do.
bakery there and
Yep.
beautiful apartment upstairs. I was actually trespassing and I was looking there and introduced myself to the owner and he was he
Jean-Marc. Yeah,
yeah, Jean-Marc, and he was kind enough to let me snoop. You know, I'm a kind of
he's a
snoop
wonderful man.
anyway. So one of the things that I think we should talk about is are there, a few initiatives that you might consider suggesting to the mayor that don't cost the city very much, hopefully, but will really, sort of capture the imagination of the community? Because one of the things that I pick up on in the research and writing that I do in terms of urban development and urban design is that loneliness is a big problem.
Mhm.
Obviously, in Belleville, we have a homelessness problem, but that might
Absolutely.
also be related to loneliness. And not just for
Absolutely.
homeless people, life can be quite lonely. And one of the things that I think really helps a community is to feel part of something bigger than yourself.
Mhm.
I'll bet you the happiest times in the lives of most people were the times when they felt they were part of something bigger than themselves.
Absolutely.
Maybe they were on the high school volleyball team and they were playing in the regional finals and they were down 2-1 and they came back to win the regional
Yeah.
championship 3-2. And there
Mhm.
they are, 50 years of age, or my age, 70, and they're still saying that was the happiest time of their lives. Well, so I think one of the priorities, and I'm sure, given your experience, and I studied your CV and your material, um, is what is one or two initiatives, one maybe that we could suggest that doesn't cost a whole lot of money, that brings the community together, so you feel, oh my God, I'm part of something special here in Belleville.
Well, there are a number of initiatives that are
I just
underway in
I just
Belleville.
want one though.
I know that. I'm just saying that there are a number of them that are underway
Okay,
that have been what
sure.
I would call probably very interesting, and they were just engaging opportunity on the waterfront within the parks to expand opportunities for multi-generational interaction. And I think one of the key forward-thinking pieces in Belleville's case was that they had put into place a very extensive waterfront, riverfront trail system and park system that
Right.
was previous to my being there. And the councils of that day and the Parks and Recreation director at that time was very visionary, and he led that charge. And I think and the same in Kingston, we had the same with my
Yeah.
father doing the very same thing. Very difficult in an historic city because property ownership right to the low lots to the waters
That's
are
right.
typically secured and very difficult to do. So it's a negotiation, usually an instrument of planning that allows for easements or right of ways, et
Yeah.
cetera. So we have that on the go. And what we haven't done, and I think that it's the same thing with the coach idea, because in the alleyways behind a lot of those storefronts on Front Street are those right of ways and alleyways, and they're not utilized. There used to be old carriageways
Yeah.
that would lead to a coach area in behind for the purposes of a horse or other storage for retail or whatever it might be, or living. And we need to activate those spaces. And the riverfront, the big one, is we have a parking lot. When I first arrived in Belleville for my job interview at City Hall, I parked in a parking lot on the river and I couldn't believe it. And I thought at first, my gosh, what a waste of use of a space
All
on a
right.
river in a
Okay. I get
center
it.
of a city.
Can I get
So,
can I stop you there just for a sec?
mhm,
Um, you and I think a lot alike, I believe. And the first time I went there, I had exactly the same reaction. So, how long is this trail system in Belleville right now?
well, there are many kilometers actually. I think somewhere around 7 to 10. It may have been expanded since my departure, but it was 7 kilometers of riverfront and waterfront trail.
So, can I
Uh,
make
there,
it?
there are
I get it.
additional.
I
What's
get it.
that?
I get it. So, can I make a suggestion?
Sure. Yeah.
All right. Um, so, uh, uh, 7 to 10 kilometers, maybe more. When I first got to Belleville, and I got to Belleville not just because the Binghamton Senators are there, but because my wife really likes it, and she shanghaied me. She grabbed me one weekend and we came down, And we were looking at Dawn. My wife is Dawn, Dawn, and she wanted a project, so we bought a couple of buildings on Front Street that she's renovating. I pay for it, but she does all the work. And we did exactly the same thing. We parked on that parking lot next to the river. And I thought, what the heck? And then I walked along the river. I got hungry, and my wife got hungry, and we couldn't find anything to do along the river except walk, right? Which was fine. I like walking. Until we finally found this food truck. I don't know if you remember, there was a food truck there.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's where I was leading, actually. But anyways.
Oh,
yeah.
I'm sorry. If I cut you off, I should shut up.
Oh, yeah, that's all right. No, go ahead.
All right. Okay. Because I do that a lot.
No, it's okay. What I was saying is we started pop-ups, and essentially,
Yeah,
if you look at some of the planning, the idea of those pop-ups were actually to be on the riverfront, not in Zwick's Park. But that's
okay. So you're as usual, you're ahead of me. But let me finish the story.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
So we found a food truck, and I said, "Oh, great. Let's order some food." And it was really good food.
Yep.
And then I looked for a place to sit. There was no place to sit. There wasn't a table, a picnic table, nothing.
Yep.
Kind of stood up against a column, and we're eating our burger and fries or whatever it was. And then I went back and then I talked to the owner of the food truck. I said, "This is great. How come you don't have like some picnic tables here, or with a couple of umbrellas there, so you're not getting in the 5 days of summer, you're not getting fried?" "Oh, we weren't allowed." I said, "Oh, that's a shame." And the only reason we were allowed out this year is because of the pandemic. I said, "What do you mean? You're not coming back next year?" He said, "No, we probably won't be allowed next year." And so one of the things that I think the mayor and his council could do, and the planning staff could do along this trail system, would be to implement a concept, which I'm sure you're already aware of. You called it pop-up stores, but I call it food truck city. People like food trucks, that you can get fish, you can get burgers, you can get chicken, you can get Jamaican food, you can get Mexican food. And if the mayor and his council were to open up the trail system to pop-up stores like you suggested, and people like to eat, and food trucks, and allow them to put out picnic tables with umbrellas and so forth, that trail will get a lot more use. If you look at a typical park, I did a study for a small town in Eastern Ontario. I don't remember which town it was. It'll come to me. McNabb Brayside, much smaller than Belleville, about 8,000 people. And I think they had like 16 or 17 beautiful parks, like fabulous baseball diamonds, soccer pitches, you name it. And I took pictures of them on the most wonderful July weekend you could imagine, just because I was trying to help the township. And it was like everybody had whooshed off to see Jesus. There wasn't a soul there. There wasn't anybody there, not even one lonely boy or girl with a baseball and a bat. Nothing. There was just nothing going on. I couldn't believe it. And it took Friday, Saturday, and Sunday to visit all these parks, and I took all these pictures. And I swear I wasn't doing it intentionally. I couldn't find a single person. And I asked McNabb Brayside, "Why did you close the snack bars that used to be there? Why did you close the bathrooms that used to be there?" "Oh, well, snack bars, people will throw garbage on, be trash on the ground. We don't want that." I said, "Oh, and what about the bathrooms?" "Well, somebody has to clean the bathrooms, and we didn't want to do that either." So they boarded up all of their little kiosks, right? And closed all their bathrooms, and they put in these smelly, stinky, what do you call those, porta potties, I guess they're called.
Mm-hmm.
And I can tell you, soccer mom doesn't really like that. You bring your daughters and your sons to the park. There's no place to get a Coke or a hot dog or a soda water or whatever. There's no place to really go to the bathroom. They're not going to go to those porta potties, which are really disgusting. And so they had, I think, I don't remember, but something like 25%, maybe more. You're the Parks and Rec guy, but I think 25% of McNabb Brayside's budget was eaten up by parks. They got no use, zero. Not a single thing. And so I said, the answer is simple. Why don't you, instead of trying to operate these things yourself, why don't you lease them out? Reopen them, lease them out. People pay you rent for that, and make it part of their responsibility to reopen the bathrooms and keep them clean, which is to their advantage. And I said, the other thing I would like you to do is I'd like you to allow each of them to develop a playland. And to me, a playland is not what it might be to you or anybody else. When I talk about a playland, Mark, what I'm talking about is something quite different than just a children's play structure. What I'm talking about is something where you have games available that all generations can play. The worst kind of Parks and Rec, in my opinion, is where you build a really nice, play structure for children. And you go there and all these 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10-year-olds are having a blast, climbing on the monkey bars, sliding down slides, getting some exercise. And the adults are sitting there smoking. What's with that? So to me, a playland has obviously a play structure for children, but it also has a bocce court, has a shuffleboard court, has a pickleball court, has a beach volleyball court, has a horseshoe pit, right? Might have three or four holes of mini golf. I don't care. It might have outdoor ping pong. It could have a badminton court, but it has things that adults can do as well, because we have a problem with adult obesity and child obesity too, but especially amongst adults. And I've been experimenting with this for a long time. And, I have owned some plazas where I might have a pizza joint here with a nice outdoor patio. And next to them, back in the day, I would put a beach volleyball court. Today it would be a pickleball court. But back then it would have been a beach volleyball court. And I remember going up to one pizza joint. It was owned by Sam Musa, and it was called Sammy's Pizza, good pizza. And I said, Sammy, I'm going to build a beach volleyball court right next to your patio and next to your pizza shop. He said, okay, great, good. And you're going to rent it from me. He said, oh, I am? Yeah, yep, you are. And you're going to run a volleyball league there. Why would I do that? I said, because I have a theory. This is quite a long time ago. I have a theory that people who play volleyball, beach volleyball, might buy more beer and pizza. He said, do you think so? I said, well, I think we could try. He said, what's the rent? I said, well, I have 5 kids. So I'm going to charge you 5 large pizzas a year. He said, I can afford that. And so the first year he did it, his sales went up by 8%. And by year 2 or 3, 15%. So what I was going to recommend, to build onto your pop-up store idea, was that if you feel that it has any merit, you might suggest to the mayor that we allow food trucks along the trail system, all different types, and we allow seating, and that we try and find some outdoor washrooms that are not shitty, literally, and that we allow development of a playland there. So we have games that adults like to play. I'll play horseshoes. I'll play ping pong. I'll play I like pickleball, because if you do that, you'll find the use of that boardwalk or trail system won't double or triple, it will quadruple or more.
Yeah, and you're bang on, Bruce. I mean, that's exactly what we were heading for in the planning. If you look at some of the deck slides that I gave you, there were a lot of simple developments within that. And what I was about to say on the trail system was that we were going to activate that trail system exactly that way.
Beautiful.
And we had ideas like just sea cans where you open them up and you and that's, of course, when I was working in Ottawa, along the trails, there were these sea can operations, and I ate dinner there a couple of times. And I've done that in other cities. Food trucks are, of course, the most popular way of doing it. They're self-contained, they're mobile, etc. We have the very same idea, was that we were going to activate the trail with food trucks, and we were also, and there was a gentleman who owned a restaurant down in Belleville. It's now called the Export Grill.
Yeah, I know the Export. I've eaten there many times.
Yes, wonderful guy who owns that, John Alexu. John and I were working on a number of plans. He's got a food truck system called I can't remember. It's smoke. It's something like a steak smoky something. But anyways, John's put that anywhere he can and had it activated. We were looking at that as one of them, and a number of other others that are in Belleville. There are a number of very good food truck systems. So we were going to put them on the waterfront, and we were already talking about very simple, you know, tables, chairs, umbrellas, picnic tables. And if you look at some of the decks that I put in there, that's exactly what I recommended.
I did see it, and I like it. But again, I can't stress enough how important it is to have some elements of the playland there as well.
Well, that was the other part I was about to say.
Okay.
So within the deck, you'll see an adult slash, all generational play areas, activity areas we call them, and they'd be for checkers. You could have, tables with checkers on them. You have areas where there'd be adult exercise equipment, food, a pickleball court, all the things that you talked about were a part of that plan along the back side where that parking lot is. And then we will double front the development of that, being that you have riverfront activity and storefront along the river as well as on Front Street. So you activate both sides and then utilize some of that space in the summer. And we would do it in hard service and soft service so that in the winter months, those that live or reside within those places, they would have the opportunity in the winter months to park out, because you're not going to have a beer and a sandwich and in that area in the winter at minus 12. But what you could do is park it out, and then in the summer you use it for multiple use. And then of course it's all about how you design it. And I've been involved in this since.
And to me, Mark, an important point to emphasize with the mayor tomorrow is that this should be profitable for the city.
Oh, it will be. No question.
The food truck should pay something every month.
Oh yeah.
To be there.
Licensing fee.
Yeah, and
rental.
I beg your pardon?
And rental fees and licensing fees.
Rental
but more importantly, the bigger picture, Bruce, is that it brings people down there, and that's the key.
That's the key. I mean, you've got it exactly right. And what we don't want to do is we don't want to drain Belleville's treasury, right? We want to make sure that as much as we can that it's additive. Are you familiar with what Paris Plage is?
Not offhand.
I'll share my screen with you just so you can see it. This is just something that I've always liked, and I'll see if I can boot it up for you. Sorry. So I'll see if I can make it a little bigger.
I think I know what you're talking about, because we use that as one of the better examples.
Yeah, it's been incredibly successful. I'll see if I can get a. No, for some reason, there's no picture there. Anyway, here's the picture. I don't know if you could see it on my screen. Maybe too small. But
I love that idea with the sand and everything.
Yeah. So one of the things that
I am familiar with that. Sorry.
Yeah, there you go. One of the things the mayor of Paris did years ago was, in August, almost all of France, all of Paris leaves. All the rich people go to the Mediterranean, but there's not everybody in Paris is rich. So what the mayor did was he brought in a few 100,000 cubic meters of sand along the river, along the Seine, and people can go and pretend they're at the Mediterranean, but they're in Paris. And part of the Playland idea, I'll stop sharing now. You get here's another picture of it. Sort of here.
Yeah, I'm familiar with that. It's wickedly cool.
I'm sure you are. So, again, that is something. If you had the food trucks and the Playlands and the pop-up stores, you had one area where you've created a fake beach. I used to own a sand pit, so I like sand.
I'm sure you did.
If you were to create a fake beach, the young women can go and young men could go and suntan if they want to have and some of the pop-up stores might be licensed. Some of them might be licensed where you could get a glass of wine or a beer.
Oh, absolutely.
But that is probably the one initiative that you and I could suggest. I mean, you could suggest to the mayor. And you know, you could tell them that the mayor of Paris, you know, if you do a little bit of research on Paris plage is just French for beach.
Sure. Yep.
If you know, it was incredibly popular and it captured the imagination. So if we were to create a Belleville plage
Mhm.
and amongst the trail system and the pop-up stores and the Playland and all the stuff we've just talked about for the last 25 minutes, I think that would capture the imagination of Belleville.
I agree 100%.
And
And
people would
it's
feel
funny
like
because
the people would feel like they're part of something bigger than
I
themselves.
agree.
And people
Yeah.
who are in a positive framework, you know, they're more productive at work. And if you own a business and you're thinking of adding another piece of machinery, I think I'm going to do that because you just had a great day at the beach.
I agree. You're absolutely right. We do think alike, and of course, it's interesting. There are many that think that way, but I think the key to it is to gain the support, uh, get enthusiasm rolling, and getting people buying in that matter to
Yeah.
lead this, because it will take some leadership.
Well,
And
you'll certainly have my support, and
appreciate that, Bruce.
I
Yeah.
suspect that the downtown BIA will support
Oh,
this.
absolutely. Yeah.
And of course you're supporting it. And if the mayor gets behind it, I mean, you know, I'm not as plugged into Belleville obviously as you are, but I know quite a few people there and some
Hmm.
developers there and investors. And
Right.
I suspect that all of them would be very, very supportive.
I appreciate that, and you've got a great. I mean, as per usual, you've got a great vision and a wonderful mind that thinks very logically, but you also have that ability to envision what it is that makes the difference in just surviving or thriving. And I think the difference in a motivational piece that brings somebody to your city or wants you to be there, you have to have that. Better than just good. It has to be great, and it doesn't always cost a lot of money to do it, does it? And
Exactly.
yeah, that's what.
I
Yeah,
mean, what we've just described should, over the next 5 years, be
yeah,
a profit center for the city.
yeah, absolutely.
I mean, there will be costs against it. I mean, there'll be some staff time, and there might be some additional, you know, cleanup required from time to time, and there might be some investment, but it's relatively small. I mean, you and I, if we had a relatively small budget, we could implement this, I think, without too much
Yeah,
fun. Can I,
yeah,
uh,
you're
can I,
bang on.
can I suggest one more initiative on a completely different,
Yeah, go ahead, Bruce. Yeah.
just one more thing, and you know, I've got another 10 minutes, and I'm going to speak for another 2 or 3, and then I want you to finish this because I've talked too much. But one of the things that is in tremendous demand and that demand is not being met in town after town after town. I'm talking South Dakota, Montana,
Sure.
Nevada, Saskatchewan. I mean, not just Ontario. There is a tremendous demand by small business owners to do what you did in your life, which is to have a property where they can live and work.
Yeah.
I'm not talking about somebody who you know, goes on Zoom a couple of times a day to teach or
Hmm.
coach.
Hmm.
I'll give you an example. One of my I do quite a bit of coaching, as I mentioned. I have a
Yes.
coaching client. His name is Nick Catchmar. He runs a very successful heating, ventilation, and air conditioning company,
Hmm.
an HVAC company, very successful, and he's a great guy. And he wanted to have a house, and in back, he wanted to have
Hmm.
a shop. And he lives in a small town in Ontario, and you know, he talked to the town about building a new house and building a shop in back, and I said, "Oh, no, you can't do that. That the shop has
Hmm.
to go to an industrial area, and the house goes into a residential area." He said, "Well, I don't want." They said, "Well," and they said, "Well, there's such a condition doesn't exist." And then Nick and I were telling the planners, I said, "Whoa, wait a second, hold on.
Hmm.
You can go down any rural road in Ontario or Manitoba
Absolutely.
or Montana or whatever, and you'll find 100,000 homes which have a shop in the back. You know, mom and dad live here, and they make kitchen cabinets in the backyard in a shop that could be 10,000 square feet. So
Absolutely.
please, Mr. and Ms. Planner, don't bullshit us. Okay. Don't tell us that doesn't exist. It exists everywhere. But the problem is, it doesn't exist new.
Mm.
And so I work with a lot of entrepreneurs, Mark, a lot. And including in Belleville now. I've got a few clients I coach in Belleville.
Oh,
And
cool.
oh, it's wonderful. I love doing it. I'll do it until, I go up to see St. Peter. Hopefully I go to St. Peter.
Hopefully, yes.
Yeah, as opposed to the alternative. But
Well, you'll fix that place up too.
all kidding aside, if Belleville really wanted to help the entrepreneur, the plumber, the electrician, the surveyor,
Yeah.
the ventilation and air conditioning guy,
The small entrepreneur, yeah.
the furniture maker, it would be to develop a new subdivision, a new old subdivision, where we're talking about light industry. We're not talking about petrochemicals, right? We're not
No,
talking,
I understand.
it's a light industry. It would be to have the ability to have, and the way that you can get it through the zoning, I think, is to have an industrial zone with accessory residential.
Mm-hmm.
So you can't build a house. You can build a shop at 5,000 square feet, 2,000 square feet, 800 square feet, 10,000 square feet, and an accessory residential. You can't build the house. You can only build it at the same time you build the workshop, or afterwards, but not before, because it's not a residential subdivision. It is exclusively for, if Belleville were to have a subdivision like that, if they had the land and they zoned it and they had 50 lots of 2 acres each, it would really help the entrepreneurs in Belleville. And I've said this to, I've done consulting and coaching with dozens of towns in the States and in Canada, and I've said the same thing to them. I found the political leadership are often very in favor. It's the planners who say, "Oh, no, you can't do that." But yes, you can. So anyway, that was the other initiative I was going to at least put in your head, and whether you bring it up with the mayor or not tomorrow, you'll, if there's the right time to do it, I think that would be a fantastic addition. And if the first 50 lots sell out, you do another 50. But this would be again a profit center for Belleville. You're not building, the city of Nepean, when we had the city of Nepean in Ottawa, it doesn't exist anymore. It's part of Ottawa, but that's what Ben Franklin. I don't know if you know Mayor Ben. That's what he did. I did a little coaching with Mr. Franklin, Mayor Franklin, who's passed away now. Great man, great mayor. And that's what Nepean did. They developed, they bought land, they rezoned it, they put the roads, water mains, and sewers in, and they developed a Colonnade business park and a few other places that have been very, very successful.
Right. Yeah.
I don't know if Belleville would ever consider doing it, but it would be a fantastic addition to the city.
Yeah, that's interesting you bring that up. I think there's a lot going on right now in Ontario in particular. I know when I was sitting in the offices in Ottawa, House of Commons with an MP, Ryan Williams, it was then that the beginning of a rethink of how we plan our communities was starting to come back again. In other words, again, so far behind your head. There's an opportunity now because of the legislative changes, and I know it scares the heck out of a lot of planners. I don't blame them. I get it. And I know that the new Planning Act that has been revised to allow for the goal or objective of building, 1.3 million homes in Ontario in the next 10 years or less, which is still going to just meet needs, because I think we're about 800,000 short now. So in other words, we're going to be behind before we get there. But there's going to, as you're pointing out, exactly what needs to happen, and that is that we have to look at creative ways and different ways, or the old ways, with a new spin, with a different spin to it, but essentially the same concept. Where we got into this North America thinking, and of course it doesn't take very long to travel anywhere, and you'll find out we have the luxury of millions of acres of land, and it has been taken for granted as though we think we can just live on, you know, endless acres of property, and it isn't going to cost any more to maintain it. And our infrastructure is being challenged. The cost to service any of these areas is very, very high. We're looking at self-contained sewage systems now, like they have in Europe,
Yeah.
rather than having to tie into the big plants that are there. Water is still water, but we have a number of those challenges. That is forcing us to have to rethink what we're doing and how we're doing it. I'm not a planner. I'm not going to pretend I am, but I have been a planner in terms of parks, and which then ties and links to community, and that goes to people's leisure activities. It goes to what they enjoy to do, and that, in fact, as you pointed out, tends to be the lead and or the marrying or the partnership that you need in a successful business, because you need people, you need to engage them, you need to attract them, and then you need to have them live, work, and play, and continue to invest in that community in many ways, not just money, but their time, their energy, and, as you say, something bigger than themselves. So we're moving forward in that way, and I think Ontario's made that move. It's scaring the heck out of a lot of planners, but I think you're bang on. That type of thinking is exactly what's going to have to happen in order for us to be successful at meeting those objectives. I mean, David Suzuki's been saying it for years. I know a number of others. I know people think it's the opposite and seems to be counterintuitive, but in fact, we need to intensify our activities into smaller areas. And then that leaves the other spaces open for those, as you say, that may or may not have the means to enjoy that space. And that's why we've given opportunities for people to have access to water, to the rivers, to the parks. And that is to give people that feeling they're part of something, and that they also don't have to be millionaires to enjoy what everybody else enjoys, and we all share it equally. But you're bang on. That's exactly where I think this mayor wants to go. I know that he's a progressive thinker. He's been in the chair of an MP representing Bay of Quinte on two different times. He's a very good guy that way, and I know that the new economic development director who's come in is a progressive thinker as well. And I know that the planning department is seeing some changes. The new director, well, I call it new, but he's been in there probably 4 years. He's a very progressive thinker as well. And I know the engineering department head is as well very progressive. Discipline being a typical engineer, but still has a very good sight on what is called the important things in life. So you're bang on, Bruce, and I think the messaging you're giving me today is good. I love it. I love to hear it. It resonates nicely with me. I know it'll resonate with Mayor Ellis as well. And I'm just hopeful that our next steps, if I can count on you to continue
You
to
can.
participate, I'd love it.
I would certainly be like, I'd like to help. Like Belleville is one of the places that I'm committed to.
Oh,
And
good.
um, I do think that it has a great future, and I'm hopeful that the mayor will in fact see that he could hire you on as a consultant and as an advisor, and I think that would be a good thing for the city. It has a great opportunity, but it's seize the day. I think it's carpe diem,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
I think we should end it on that. I'm going to put this recording on YouTube unlisted. I'll send you the link. You can do whatever you want with it, right? If you
Thank you, Bruce.
share it with the mayor, or share like 2 minutes with the mayor, or anybody
Absolutely.
else, it's up to you. I won't share it, but you can. All right.
Thank you, Bruce. I appreciate that.
And
It's
reach
been,
back to me at any time.
well, thank you.
And if you ever do decide to design and build a new event center in Belleville,
Mhm.
you're probably looking at one of the best designers of stadiums and arenas in the world, in me. I'm probably, I mean that, I'm probably one of the most knowledgeable people in how to make a stadium or an arena a paying proposition.
Mhm.
And there's a lot more to it. If we had that
Yes,
discussion,
there is.
we'd be here for the next 60 minutes. And
There's a lot to it.
there's a
Yes.
lot to it. But if I know how to build a private sector arena, having done that
Yes,
with
you have.
with no government assistance whatsoever.
And your story is incredible, by the way. And
Thank you.
I've been digging into it for a long time, and it is absolutely incredible what you achieved
Well, thank you,
there.
Jeff.
Hats off to you, and hats off to your partnerships with your key staffing and partners that you brought in. You're a very wise guy and very gutsy individual. I appreciate it.
Well, thanks again for everything, and we'll see you soon, I hope.
Thanks for your time, Dr. Firestone. Appreciate it.
All right, bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.